This is Chicago. At the dawn of the 21st century, Chicago's media was dominated by a handful of major corporations. But a resistance movement arose to free Chicago's media from their clutches. One player in this movement is the Chicago Independent Media Center and its TV show, Chicago Independent Television. The Independent Media Center is a worldwide network of grassroots correspondents committed to using the tools of the media for promoting social and economic justice. You are watching this month's dispatch from the Chicago Independent Media Center.
Welcome to Chicago Independent Television, a collection of progressive video reports produced by independent journalists and media workers from around Chicago that is free from corporate or commercial support or influence. I'm your host, Mike Callis. In this episode, we're going to join Chicago workers as they rally for a $15 minimum wage. Then we're going to hit the streets and march with the rally against the prison industrial complex. Then finally, we're going to visit the uncanny connection between global warming and the polar vortex. All that and more coming up. Stay tuned.
Here at Exxon, we hate your children. We all know the climate crisis will rip their world apart, but we don't care because it's making us rich. That's right. Every year, Congress gives the fossil fuel industry over $10 billion in subsidies. That's your tax dollars lining our pockets. Making a fortune destroying your kids' future? At Exxon, that's what we call good business. ExxonHatesYourChildren.com.
Members of Occupy Chicago held a Christmas celebration called Occupy Your Kids, which included food, games, art, and of course, pointed political commentary.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Chicago has been at the epicenter of an ongoing campaign by fast food workers to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Here's coverage from a recent protest.
I call on the mayor and the city council to take the votes to pass CHA reform now and to take the votes to raise the minimum wage to $15 now.
And we'd like for you, in the interest of time, just to answer yes or no. Will you push to get the Keeping the Promise ordinance into a hearing and a vote by November in the Committee on Housing and Real Estate? Please respond yes or no.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
When the ordinance comes up for a vote, do you commit to turn your sponsorship into a yes vote and recruit other colleagues to join you in supporting this ordinance? Please respond yes or no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, but we need your help.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Si se puede.
We need, as Alderman Sposato said, we need each and every one of you to get out and vote. If you don't vote, the people in leadership will not move. The only way to get the Keeping the Promise ordinance through, to have accountability of the CHA and all of the city departments that spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, for you to get out and vote and convince your friends, your neighbors, your family to vote, because every single one of them counts.
Thank you, Alderman Wagaspack. Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you, and I join here with my colleagues today. We want to make sure that CHA keeps their promise Release those vouchers in the hands that need them most. Let's get this circulated so we can get decent housing for everyone in the city of Chicago and the surrounding areas. We support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Sawyer. And now Alderman Moreno, who is the lead sponsor on this.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I know you could be doing a lot of other things, but I don't know of a more important issue than housing for every human being, every Chicagoan. And the CHA has failed miserably in keeping the promise, not only the vouchers, but the millions and tens of millions of dollars that they're hoarding. You know, we struggle every year, the aldermen do, because we've got such a tight city budget. The CHA does not have a tight city budget. They have millions and millions of dollars. And we know that we have residents that need homes, so we've got, you know, our colleagues, 8 or 9 of us that are up here, but what I've learned in Chicago is if an alderman signs an ordinance, we need you to be behind them, to come up here with us and vote for it. Thank you.
Necessary to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour for workers here in Chicago, in Illinois, and across the country. And to ask that housing for working people be available and affordable. Our work together is about taking a stand that is moral, that honors the dignity of every human being, and ensures that people who are working for a living, a real living, one that carries with it dignity. Those are some of the highest values of people of faith, of all faiths, that we share. That human dignity is the basis of our work together, that there is no question that that requires some hard choices and some sacrifice, but working people know. People working for poverty level wages already know about hard choices and sacrifice. People without affordable housing already know about hard choices and sacrifice. It's time for all of us to stand up together and ask how we can be part of the solution. And right now, what we can do is ask our elected officials, demand that our elected officials stand by their values and take the votes needed to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and to release CHA dollars to make housing affordable now.
By allowing the big corporations that can afford it now to pay the minimum wage now, the smaller businesses would benefit from the economic boom of having that extra money circulating through the economy. And will you commit to pushing Alderman Pat O'Connor to call a hearing on the $15 an hour minimum wage ordinance?
Yes.
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 Yes, but once again, we need your help.
Yes.
Muy buenas tardes. Es un orgullo estar aquí con ustedes peleando por la lucha por $15 de la hora para aumentar el salario mínimo. Every time we talk about raising the minimum wage, corporate America says we're going to lose jobs, and we do not lose jobs. We make neighborhoods better. What do we want?
I'm proud to stand in support of $15 minimum wage in our city and a coordinated effort to drop homelessness by keeping the promise of affordable housing. Some in power in this city cannot imagine what many Chicagoans live like every day. While wages have decreased here, housing costs have increased. Housing should not be a privilege in this city. Earning decent pay for hard work should not be a privilege in our city. In our city, the high quality of life should be a right. I am committed, and I'm looking forward to $15 an hour.
I'm up here on the stage, I gotta talk fast, and I'm looking at all these $100 bills, so I'm gonna keep it 100 for you, okay? I have nicknamed myself the Iron Lady after Margaret Thatcher. Guess why? Because something is wrong with this picture up here. Women, something is wrong with this picture. My sister Leslie Harrison from the 5th Ward couldn't be here today. She is in full support, as well as myself. But something is wrong with this picture. It's a damn shame that I'm the only woman up here. That's all I gotta say.
Hey, I'm here in full support, but I know I said it 2 times already. We cannot do this without your help. You guys need to pound your alderman. Tell them you want them to support us on this. So thank you very much. Get on the phone starting this week and start pounding away. Thank you.
What we need is to get more money in the hands of folks that will spend that in our communities. How does $15 create more jobs? That money in your hands will go towards groceries, will go towards the things that we need to set our tables. That demand is going to create jobs and create a middle out recovery. Trickle down doesn't work. We need middle out recovery. $15 an hour will get us there. Let's go.
You know, they say that $15 is too much. There's a $13 alternative. If the minimum wage would have just kept pace with inflation when it was created, it would be over $21 an hour today. $15 is very fair. So as the alderman said, help us push. I want to thank SEIU, Action Now, the Grassroots Collaborative, and all of our other partners, and all of the aldermen and our co-sponsors, Alderman Arena and Alderman Sawyer. Thank you all. Keep pushing.
This is Jill Stein. You're watching Chicago Independent Television.
Chicago Independent Television presents Profiles in Cowardice with Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel. At the 2012 Montrose Beach Kite Festival, held the same weekend as the 2012 NATO Summit in Chicago, and co-sponsored by the NATO Summit and by war contractor Boeing, Mayor Rahm Emanuel made an appearance, but abruptly left. Why did he leave? Was there a policy emergency? Was the Kite Festival overrun by lepers? No. Chicago's badass mayor was running away from the combined strength of 2 protesters.
Political public relations stunt, and everybody can see through it. You give kites to kids in America and drop bombs on kids in Iraq. You drop bombs on kids in Afghanistan. You drop bombs on kids that speak Arabic. No to NATO. No to the warmongers. No to Boeing. Go home. Get out of here.
You're not even from Chicago! Give us our libraries, man! Give us our mental health care facilities!
What you have to say for yourself is not in front of a camera. Defend yourself. Defend bombers. Defend the cluster bombs. Defend the kids that have been killed. No to NATO. Go home.
We want a mental health care facility in every ward! Get some of your money!
The mayor can't even speak for himself. Speak on behalf of NATO. Speak on behalf of Boeing. What can you say? Nothing. Because you're a bunch of murderers. Go home, warmonger! Go home, murderers!
We want our mental health care clinics that you're closing on us!
No more cluster bombs! No more Boeing! No more hypocritical public relations stuff!
And now Rahm Emanuel is off to go fillet some lobbyists. This has been Profiles in Cowardice.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. The prison population has escalated in Chicago over the last decade. In this segment, we'll learn more about what the public thinks about the prison industrial complex, as well as the grassroots effort to end mass incarceration.
I was raised in such a way that when you see something, you say something. You scream something. You rain righteous indictment down from the rooftops until it stops.
All right.
You don't just walk by without even picking up a flyer.
Yeah, we all know that the prison industrial complex is a big problem. And sometimes, we're in a hard place because the politicians don't really want to act to do anything about it. And what I'm promoting is a concept called jury nullification. That's where we take our direct power to serve on a jury and stand up and say that the law itself, if we deem it to be unfair, unjust, and to cause undue hardship to a certain person, then we should not enforce that law. And there's a lot of people who are in jail right now for victimless crimes. I like to say if there's no victim, there should be no crime.
The U.S. now imprisons a higher proportion of its population than any society in the world. There are 2.2 million incarcerated in the U.S. prison system. The U.S. has only 5% of the world's population, yet has a full 25% of the world's prison population. The prison system targets the most vulnerable and marginalized in our society. It funnels the poor into the system and weeds out the wealthy. We in Chicago are all too familiar with mass incarceration, police torture, and abuse.
As a church, it is our job and our duty to fight for those who are unjustly accused and unjustly incarcerated, from our youth to our adults. For years now, we've been working on dismantling this prison system as it is known today, where it incarcerates people at a high rate. Myself, I actually spent 19 years in federal prison, and I do understand what it was like in 1989, and by the time I left out of there in 2008, it became a big business. It was doing better than Walmart's was. And they was having labor in there where the people were making cables for Scud missiles and things like that, and they was only making $1 an hour. I mean, we understand now that this is about business. It's not about people. There's no concern for our people, and they're just locking them up. As we seen in Pennsylvania, where the judge was sending youth to prison because he was getting a kickback. He ended up getting 27 years, but it's hundreds of young people whose lives have been torn apart because he was in the business of sending young people to juvenile prisons. And I don't care about the 27 years they gave him. That will not make up for the injustice that has been done. And when these young people are freed and then they get caught in the system again because no one has supplied assistance and help for them, because I don't know about most of you, but when you go in prison, there's a whole new dynamic that comes upon you. You have to learn how to survive, not live. You know, from one day to the next. And you're talking about young people, 13, 14, 15 years old, put in places like this for things that they should have went home for, because it has become big business. We have a duty to stand up and fight this machine called mass incarceration. We have a duty to stand up and say we won't take it anymore. We have a duty to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. We have a duty and an honor and a pleasure to sit here today and talk, but we got to do more than just talk. We have to put our feet to the pavement and get the work done, because as you can see, none of the elected officials are here. They don't care about that. We keep putting the same people back in the office, and they keep doing the same thing, and we wonder why we got the same results.
This is my son, Jaime Juan, who has been wrongfully convicted for the past 18 years. He's been tortured by the Chicago police. They took my son from my house and he's been kidnapped all these years. My son has not been able to come home for a crime that he didn't do. The police officer sitting in prison. The Tribune investigated the case and saw that my son, and put it in the front page, the torture committee investigated the case and found that my son was wrongfully convicted, tortured by the Chicago police, but could not pass the case because he was not a John Burge.
We're confused because we see, at least particular on my behalf, I see more white kids in school than I see black and Latino kids that end up in prison, and that just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm pissed about that. I'm pissed about the system that supports that, how so many people walk blissfully by, where their horizons are so dim and down to the center. Or if we were just to see beyond that, we could see the injustice that exists around us, the hell that we live in, that is mass incarceration.
Buddha monk once said, remember those days because it's still those days.
I'm Glenn Greenwald. Chicago Independent Television.
We did that because we're really concerned that hydraulic fracturing is coming to the state of Illinois. It's caused a lot of environmental damage in other states, and right now it's not here on a large scale, and we're really afraid that our lawmakers are going to allow the industry to come in, and we're really afraid that that's going to make people sick, and it's going to cause a lot of pollution and environmental damage.
All we ever get is a veil of distortion and lies and misrepresentations that obscure reality.
We have an update on that. Good evening. We have a lot of news to tell you about 763 near the 15.
Giant media corporations decide what is news and what is not news.
Is it to control people's ideas? Is to control their imagination?
The news we rely on is in the hands of commercial enterprises.
If it didn't appear in the New York Times, Fox News, CNN, it never happened.
There are certain events in journalism that you may not cover.
There were incidences of physical abuse.
CBS decided this is not a story we're going to fight for.
All of a sudden, the plane exploded, and one guy goes, "Oh, you think it's a missile?"
It was a complete act of deceit. Well, we basically supported the Bush policy.
When that many people die, you owe it to them to find out what really happened.
Spying,
censorship,
militarism, secrets,
corruption,
power,
lies,
Profit.
This is the mother of all scandals.
Corporations are making profit off the killing.
You cannot go against the White House and survive.
There has never been a conspiracy.
Wars really are started by the mainstream media.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. The frigid winter phenomenon known as the polar vortex has an uncanny connection to global warming. We'll learn more in this next segment.
There is little dispute that the anthropogenic rise of world temperatures is and has been actually happening, at least among people who don't have a financial stake in the status quo. After all, we've got record droughts and decreasing polar ice levels and record carbon dioxide levels and growing ocean acidity levels and the polar vortex. What? The polar vortex? The blast of winter cold from the Arctic that drove record cold and snows across North America as far south as Texas during the winter of 2013 and 2014? How is that attributable to global warming? After all, greenhouse gases trap in more heat and increase global average temperatures, so you'd figure that temperatures in the wintertime would be on the whole warmer, instead of seeing record cold levels, at least in North America. But yes, even the polar vortex is yet another crappy consequence of global warming. It's time now for the connection between global warming and the polar vortex. A team of Korean and American researchers investigated the polar vortex disturbance and sought to determine where it came from. Their report was published in September 2014 in Nature Communications. One of the authors of the paper described the polar vortex in 2014 as a side effect of global warming. Here's their best guess as to what happened. Water in Earth's oceans flows in streams from warm zones to cold zones and back again. One of those flows, the Gulf Stream, originates in the southern Atlantic and moves north and east toward Europe. But global warming, caused by you and me burning dead dinosaurs and disrupting the Earth's fragile temperature balance, global warming has made those waters much warmer than normal. In the summer and fall, those warmer than usual waters have melted ice caps, particularly focusing on the Barents Sea and in the Kara Sea north of Europe. When those seas have no ice in the winter months, the heat previously trapped in those seas escapes skyward into the atmosphere in the winter. That heat continues to pour out of the Arctic into the skies through the winter, forming an atmospheric high-pressure block over the Ural Mountains in western Russia. By January and February, that block starts to affect the behavior of the polar vortex that swirls over the Arctic all year round. The polar vortex is then unable to continue its normal motion around the Arctic because of that block, and the result is that waves of Arctic cold move southward, overwhelming the jet stream that serves as a natural barrier against the Arctic cold and into North America proper. Keep in mind that this situation is the best guess the investigators laid out. Time and research will tell if they're correct. Another thing to keep in mind, this line of research into global warming and the polar vortex has been 3 years in the making. Its main motivation was actually a series of bitter winters that Korea has suffered in the past 10 years. By coincidence, the paper that was published in Nature Communications was submitted for review on January 15, 2014, just days after North America got kicked in the teeth by the polar vortex. If this is all true, or more true than we could have imagined, we have yet another reason to curb our emissions of greenhouse gases, to avert the death heat that would roast us, the rising ocean levels that would flood us, and the global warming-induced polar vortex that would freeze us in the wintertime. Mother Nature is clearly trying to tell us something. It's long past time to act.
Hi, I'm Bourbon Supreme, and whenever I'm watching some sort of moving images on a screen, it's indie media for sure.
Make ChicagoActivism.org your homepage. All the news, events, and contacts for activism in Chicago. The Chicago Activism News aggregates content from over 100 activist organizations from around Chicago and Illinois. There's also a search bar along the top if you want to search the web using Google, making it convenient to have ChicagoActivism.org your homepage.